Welcome. We're glad
Oops,
you
sorry.
all.
I'll take, yeah.
That's okay. I'm glad you're all here and can participate in this. And I'm particularly happy to see people who are not town meeting members who may just want to learn more about what happens at town meeting and be able to write to your town meeting members, select board members, whoever it is you feel should get a letter about how you feel about these articles. I've switched up the order a little bit based on a few things, one person being stuck on a slow bus, etc. So I think let's just give it a couple of minutes as people dribble in. Town meeting starts, by the way, for everybody who's not on town meeting, it starts on Monday. And, you know, I actually don't know if this is public knowledge. And for any of you who are not in town meeting, and I see a lot of town meeting folks, I don't know whether you know the order of what's coming up on town meeting. That's on the website, Cindy?
Deborah Brown, the moderator, has sent it to the TMMA list, so the Town Meeting Members Association list, which is also public for anybody who's not a town meeting member. You can't post to that list, but you can see all of anything that's posted there. So if you look for an email from Deborah Brown, I think last week it was, she has posted a expected schedule.
Right. Yeah, and you may want to, if you're interested in commenting on any articles, you really need to get it in before obviously that town meeting. So keep checking the site, and maybe what we can do, if somebody can handle this, put the link. I don't know how people sign up to get those emails who are not in town meeting.
Right.
But if anybody wants to spend a little bit of,
yeah, you can't get any notifications, I think, but you can view it. I'll find it and put it in the chat.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so welcome everyone. Like this is about the town meeting articles that have some kind of environmental impact. And feel free to bring, if you think there's something else that I may have left off the list, or LexCAN and CLC left off the list, please speak up and we'll try to talk about it. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to start with our 3 tree committee articles, and then we'll go to Charlie Wyman, who has the citizens article, which is a resolution. So I am going to introduce Nancy Sofin. Nancy Sofin is on the tree committee. She's talked to LexCAN before about the importance of trees. We welcome her always, and her in-depth knowledge about the importance of trees in many areas of our life. So go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen. Great. Can everybody see that? Okay, so I'm representing the tree committee tonight, and we are bringing 3 articles to town meeting this year. And so I'd like to start with brief descriptions of all 3, pausing between them only for clarifying questions. And then at the end, I'll invite more questions and comments.
So while Nancy's, just a clarification, while Nancy's sharing her screen, if you can raise your hand if you have a question. Otherwise, we can't see the whole screen right now, so.
Oh, thank you. So all of these articles amend tree bylaw section 120-8, and this part of the bylaw applies only to sites undergoing demolition or major construction, which could be new construction or the increase of a building's footprint by 50% or more. And it applies only to the setbacks of those lots, the borders of the lot shown here shaded in red, 30 feet wide in front and 15 feet wide in the sides and back. And it does not apply to the buildable interior of the lot. And last, The bylaw applies to those trees that are 6 inches diameter or larger, located in the setback, which it calls protected trees. But calling these trees protected is a little misleading. There are absolutely no prohibitions on removing them ever. But what the bylaw does say is that if those trees are removed, a permit is required with a permit fee, and they must be mitigated by planting new trees or paying to the town tree fund, which the DPW then uses for tree planting around town. And those protected trees that are kept in the setbacks must be physically protected from construction damage by fencing at their drip line so that the critical root zone isn't damaged. And last, protected trees that are hazardous are exempt from permit fees or mitigation requirements. So we have 3 articles amending the bylaw. You can learn more about why we think they're needed and how exactly they'll work from video presentations and the amendments texts themselves in the town meeting website. Tonight, I'll just summarize what the motions say. Article 34 tries to improve the protection of the retained trees. 35 changes mitigation requirements, and 36 deals with exemptions. So let's start with Article 34. Our regulations now say that fencing should be erected at the drip line, protecting the critical root zone before any site work begins. But in fact, few of these trees are really adequately protected, and many later decline or die. So the motion requires that a builder submit as part of their permit application a tree protection plan that's been prepared by a certified arborist. By bringing in professional expertise early in the project, the builder has a concrete action plan to follow that can maintain a tree's health through the disruption of construction. This is particularly important in situations where they want to save a tree, but must encroach on the critical root zone to install utilities or for other needs. The amendment also says that site work cannot begin until the arborist notifies the town that the tree protection plan is in place and notifies the town in writing that it's in place and that those protections have to stay in place until the landscaping phase of the project begins. And then to help enforce these measures, the motion gives the tree warden the authority to stop any construction activity that violates the tree protection plan. And if these trees die or are removed within 1 year after the end of construction, that loss must be mitigated. So I'll pause here. Are there any clarifying questions? And if not, we can go on to Article 35. Article 35 amends the mitigation requirements of the bylaw. If you remember, when protected trees are removed, new trees must be planted, or a fee in lieu of planting paid to the town tree fund, or some combination of the two. Very large trees, those 24 inches or larger, require proportionally more mitigation. And there's more mitigation credit given for planting with large shade tree species. Unfortunately, we don't often see a project with plantings like this. They're more likely to look like this. And we're losing a lot of shade, particularly along our streets. Our zoning laws require that a developer must plant street trees in a new development. This motion proposes that a similar standard be used for a new home in an existing neighborhood. If mitigation is owed, some minimal planting along the street frontage, where neighbors and the public will most benefit, is required without the option of paying into the tree fund. Planting should allow no more than a 35-foot gap between trees or to the property boundary, and existing trees, including town trees, count toward that goal. The trees may be planted in the front setback or with the tree warden's permission in the town right-of-way. And if space allows, large shade tree species are required. All of this depends on suitable planting sites being available. Utilities, driveways, or ledge may make planting impossible, and in that case, it's not required. And other trees, overhead wires, or rooftop solar may be reason to plant smaller tree species. These details will be specified in the regulations that accompany the bylaw. And that's Article 35. Are there any questions about it?
And again, if anybody has a question, or if you want to wait until all of the tree committee bylaws are done, we can stop sharing, and then people can raise their hands and ask Nancy a question directly. But raise your hand if you have a question.
Nope. If there are none,
Nope.
I'll move on. Let's look at Article 36. When talking about protected trees, those, again, 6 inches or larger in the setbacks when there's construction, to be exempt from the bylaw means that there are no permit fees or mitigation requirements when that tree is removed. And currently, protected trees are exempt only if they're declared hazardous by the tree warden. There used to be an exemption for invasive tree species, but it was removed from our bylaw in 2010. This motion aims to make the process for declaring a hazardous tree exempt uniform, unambiguous, and efficient by adopting a process that has succeeded in Cambridge. A builder who thinks that a tree should be exempt because it's hazardous would hire an arborist to examine the tree and fill out the International Society of Arborists Basic Tree Risk Assessment form to determine if that tree is at low, moderate, high, or extreme overall risk. If the result is high or extreme risk, the tree is exempt. The use of the ISA form provides clear parameters for the arborist, and the tree warden no longer makes a site visit to examine the tree. He needs only to check that the paperwork was submitted. This motion would also restore the exemption of some invasive trees. The species to be exempt would be defined in regulations, which gives the town the tools and flexibility to respond to current and future threats. The current threat that we're facing now is from tree of heaven, which is an invasive tree that also is the favorite host tree of the spotted lanternfly, which is a very destructive agricultural and landscape pest. The tree committee intends to definitely include tree of heaven and probably some other species from the Massachusetts prohibited plant list. But our intent is to not exempt Norway maple or black locust, which make up significant percentages of the town tree canopy. The exemption would apply not just to protected trees on construction sites, but also to public trees. This means that the town could remove invasive trees without holding the public hearing that is normally required when a non-hazardous town tree is to be removed. And that is the end of my presentation. I'll stop sharing for any questions or comments.
So Sally Byberg.
Yes, thank you. I would like to know, Nancy, what replacement means if a tree is replaced. If a tree of substantial size is cut down, is a small tree put in that will take many years to get to the size of the large tree, or will a large tree be required?
What the bylaw requires is inch for inch mitigation. So if you cut down a 20-inch tree, you have to replace it with 20 inches of new trees. And a typical tree is considered 3 inches in caliper. So that would be essentially 7 new trees. We give a multiplier of 4 times credit if you plant an oak as opposed to, say, a dogwood. So that means that you could plant just 2 trees, 2 oaks, but they would eventually grow to be the large shade trees that we really value so highly.
Thank you.
Oh, and I should say that large trees, so if a 30-inch tree were cut down, one would have to mitigate 4 times as many inches or 120 inches. So that's why we
good.
also offer the higher credit for large shade trees, because otherwise it would be frankly impossible to mitigate that as many inches as are being cut down.
Thank you.
Edward.
If I recall right, in the video presentations, there were a number of comparisons between shade in Lexington and Cambridge. If we pass all 4 of these tree articles, in what areas will we still be lagging Cambridge?
Oh, good question. I think we will certainly be doing better on the street shade frontage than we are now. And we already do better than Cambridge with the backyard shade.
Thank you.
So I don't know where we'll still be lagging. It's a good question.
And if I thought Dan Miller was coming, who moved here from Cambridge. So, but I don't see him on the call, so he may have an answer. So if we want to jot that down as a question, we are recording this.
And I will say we have a much higher tree canopy than Cambridge does. It really, where we don't compare favorably really has to do with street trees.
So I have a question, Nancy. If you take down a 20-inch tree and you put up 7 small accepted trees, we know that we'll be losing carbon sequestration because a larger tree sequesters way more than 7 small trees. It takes a while to get there. Do you think that's been captured in the bylaw as it is now, or will it be captured going forward? I know there's a bylaw, I think they're meeting now, or there is a bylaw working group. And if that is something we'd like to see, is that something we should write to the bylaw working group about?
I think the group you're referring to is the bylaw enforcement working group.
Okay.
And they are trying to help solve some roadblocks to efficient and uniform enforcement of our current bylaw. I think the fact of the matter is, when you cut down a big tree, you lose that big tree, and it cannot be replaced in our lifetime. And we're
Yeah.
I'm
Under-
looking to the Citizens
Yeah.
article to help the town perhaps strike a wiser balance between development and sustainability.
Edward, do you have a new question?
A new one. So Nancy, I'm assuming you know a little bit about the work of this enforcement enhancement group. What are, I mean, it is striking what we already have on the books and what is unenforced. What are some of these obstacles that are getting in the way of enforcing what's already on the books?
I'm going to invite other members of the tree committee to weigh in here. If you have, I do not go to these meetings. I'm not a member of the group, but I'm certainly aware of the issues that we brought to them. So for instance, one of them that we're trying to solve with Article 34 is that currently the tree warden only has so much time, and he makes an initial site visit to a site and tells the builder before he leaves, that fences need to be put up around trees. But he does not inspect that site again until they're ready for the certificate of occupancy. So unless a tree committee member has driven by the site and then emails the DPW to say, you know, the fences never went up, there are no eyes on the project. And then if we do make that email, then the tree warden calls the developer. Usually that day, the fences go up, and 2 weeks later, they've been knocked over by equipment, and they're forming an orange puddle under the base of the tree. So our hope is that if an arborist has to notify the town in writing that the tree protections are in place, that at least will get the fences up in the first place. And then if a tree committee member drives by and there's an orange puddle of fence around the base of the tree, we can call the tree warden, and he now has some teeth in his enforcement, where instead of just saying, please put the fence back up, he could conceivably stop excavation. And basically every part of the bylaw has something like that. There's just a lot of non-compliance also.
Well, I think that question and the answer brings up a few things that we have in town, which are, you know, if neighbors see something that they think is not just right, maybe notify whether it's the committee or the town or somebody that what you see seems out of whack with what you understood it to be. And because staff can't be everywhere all at once. So we need to be good neighbors and stewards of of the environment ourselves, and bring to attention when we see something that we think isn't in line with what we understand tonight or understand from other meetings. So no more questions. Nancy, thank you. Thank you for all your work to try to elevate the tree committee's work to be successful. We're now going to have Charlie Wyman talk to us about the Article 37, the tree resolution. Charlie?
And, yep, thank you. And let me share my screen. Can you all see this?
Yep.
Good.
And I neglected to say Charlie Wyman is the head of the Lexington Living Landscapes. He gave birth to that group and is also in the Importance of Trees group. So take it away, Charlie.
Thank you, Ricky. So Article 37 is a bit different. It's a citizen's petition filed by a group of residents that asks town meeting to adopt a resolution on the importance of trees. And if you haven't read it yet, I'd encourage you to read it. It's on the town meeting website. It's a response to the widespread belief that we're losing too many trees to a variety of causes and not doing enough to protect and replace them. It closely tracks the statement of concern for Lexington's trees that you may have signed this past year. It essentially has two parts. The first recites the many ways trees contribute to our health and quality of life here in Lexington, summarized by this slide. And having said that, the focus of the second half of the resolution is to ask town meeting to declare that a robust tree canopy is vital to our quality of life, public health, and sustainability, that the town commits to using its resources and authority to help build and maintain that canopy, while mindful of the need for balance with other pressing public needs, and calls upon town departments and committees to set actionable goals reflecting the magnitude of the need and metrics by which to measure their progress. So why are we asking town meeting to adopt this? If it's just a resolution and isn't legally binding with vague calls for improvement, what's the point? I think there are four. One is to ask town meeting to go on record in telling our leaders, town boards, and town staff that a robust tree canopy is an important goal of the town, and we should use our resources to work towards that goal. A second is to impress upon our leaders that the full value of our trees should be considered in every decision that affects them. We're not asking that no tree ever be cut down, only that decision makers consider all the trees contribute to our quality of life, as you saw on that slide a minute ago, in making budgetary and development decisions. It's also intended to note that the measures before town meeting this year are an important step in the right direction. The 3 amendments to the tree bylaw that you've just heard, plus some modest budget increases in the forestry division and the addition of a staff person to the division of public grounds. But they are not in and of themselves a sufficient solution, and we need to do more. And finally, a purpose is to help set the stage for an urban forest master plan, which the town is proposing to undertake in the next couple of years, and which ideally will involve extensive public input into defining the urban forest Lexington wants, and also provide a roadmap to help us get there. So that's the resolution. I'll stop sharing my screen and happy to try to answer any questions.
Avram. Avram,
So,
okay, good.
Sorry, I had to unmute.
Right.
My question about this is, so you want to send a message to the town leaders, but does your group believe that the select board and the planning board are not currently aware of these issues and considering these issues?
I would say that they certainly are aware of these issues and they're considering these issues. We met with them back in May after the sort of towards the end of the intense period of signing individuals up to the statement of concern for Lexington's trees. Over 1,000 people signed that petition. 25 different organizations, committees, and businesses did. We presented a list of things that we would like the town to do. There was some movement in that direction, but we feel clearly not enough. It's also a problem that will take years to resolve. The tree bylaw working group that Nancy spoke for and I was a member of, we considered a number of things, eventually deciding that the 3 before town meeting this year are appropriate at this stage, but that many towns and cities around the country are doing a lot more, and possible steps that we can consider in the future. We'd love to see a bigger budget for the forestry division. We'd still love to see more activity in planting street trees. And the resolution is really to sort of keep the pressure on and just to remind town leaders that we're not doing enough to protect and enhance our tree canopy. Mindful that it will take some time and mindful that there are competing public needs, but that we are asking town meeting to go on record as saying that a robust tree canopy for all the reasons shown in the slide is an important goal for the town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Great. It warms my heart to see 4 tree articles on the warrant this year. It says a lot about what people in town are caring about and willing to bring forward. So thank you, Charlie, for doing this citizens article.
Thank
It's
you.
not always easy to do a citizens article. Okay, so I'm gonna switch now to be going in the number order, which brings us to Article 7. And I'm gonna share my screen. I'm going to do my best to present this, but it really is something that Maggie Peard, our Sustainability and Resilience Officer, has gotten into the warrant this year, and I'm very excited about this. So for those of you who are on town meeting, you'll notice that it was Glenn Parker who brought it to my attention. I had not carefully read through the 54 warrant articles just yet, so I missed this. So this ostensibly sets up sustainable capital projects, the ability for us to have this every year in the sort of the town warrant. And if I get any of this wrong, because I only have what Maggie and I talked about online, please raise your hand and feel free to correct me on my facts. But for this year's, Maggie had some very specific things she wanted to do, which was one, install one more EV charger for the people in town who are now getting EVs, the cops, the town manager, I think, had an EV, just so that people with EVs who work in town can have an extra charger that will be available for the people who work in town during working hours and available to the public after that. And she's putting aside another $30,000 to be appropriated at some point when it becomes clear. Oh no, I'm sorry. One, she knows where she wants it to go. The other will go somewhere else, unknown right now. The other I'm really excited about is to look at Lincoln Field as a potential spot for solar canopies. And this came up when we talked about Lincoln Fields a year ago. Like, why not? I mean, if you've been out there with kids or yourself, it's hot in the summer. It is blaring hot. And so not only would we be able to gather some electricity for the town, we will be able to provide shade. So it's a win-win as far as I'm concerned. And then if we continue to have an article like this every year, we'll give Maggie or whoever is in that position the capability of doing something more quickly than having to wait for another town meeting. So I will stop sharing. I'll say that years ago, when a group of us worked on trying to get a sustainability director, and we're going to bring it to town meeting. In the long run, we didn't, but we did get an agreement from the town manager to hire somebody. We did want to have some type of article that would provide some funding for this position because, you know, we thought it would be important to keep money coming in. And one vehicle we had hoped to do was have some kind of revolving fund because we save a lot of money by installing solar. So have some of that money. That is not what this article is. That's just my hope for the future. Does anybody have any questions about this article? Cindy.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Thanks, Ricky. We did discuss this quickly at a previous Sustainable Lexington meeting, and I do think it's a good thing. One thing that I mentioned during that meeting is my own sort of wanting to really pay attention to this. Is that, you know, town meeting passed a resolution in 2013 to take climate into account in every decision that is made in the town. And what I expressed before, and I'm going to express it again, is that this shouldn't be just the one way that we do anything that has to do with sustainability within the town budget. So I support it, but it's I think we do need to do a better job as you know, across the board as a town, to be all sort of staff and board and committee members aware of what things can be done with any sort of project, and that it needs to be more of not every project, it doesn't scale if every project has to go through a sustainability and resilience officer. So I'm completely supportive of it. The Sustainable Lexington Committee didn't take a position, so I'm just speaking on my own behalf. I'm completely supportive of it, but we do need to still be thinking about taking climate change into account with every decision that we make. So, and I just wanted to let the LexCAN members know, and you know, anybody who's here, that we did have. I asked last night, but there's something, an article coming up about redoing parking lots at Muzzy, and I forget what else. And I asked the question about whether, you know, solar was considered to go over those parking lots, and the answer was no. So we still have a lot more to do in these areas. So thanks for that.
Yeah, and thank you, Cindy, for bringing that up. That was a little stunning to me, the answer to that question. To me, you don't lay down new parking lot surface unless you've thought about what has to go under it if you are eventually going to do solar. We need to take a holistic approach to these projects. And thank you for inserting the Article 13 from many years ago, which we should be following a little bit more closely. Fran, you have a question.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, $30,000, was that specified for a study or a plan or something? Because I think if a solar developer comes in, they make proposals, don't they? And, you know, would you need that sort of thing? And are they thinking it would be a purchased situation, or whether it would be, you know, PPA or whatever?
An excellent question that I am not able to answer. Cindy, do you know? From what I can tell,
I don't know. I have that question as well.
Mark Sandine, do you know the answer to that question?
The town has been buying solar lately since the Inflation Reduction Act came into existence. So the reason we did power purchase agreements before was because the town didn't have tax equity and couldn't get the value of the tax credit. And so today there's a direct pay provision in the Inflation Reduction Act that allows that 30% tax credit to come directly to the town. And when you take that tax credit in, it makes all the sense in the world for the town to own solar now, as opposed to doing lease agreements.
And the other part of Fran's question, which you know you're not responsible for answering, which I can't answer, is the $30,000 all for just a study on what could be done at Lincoln Field?
You'd have to ask Maggie for the details of that, but
Okay. Let's keep that question,
it
Fran and
shouldn't
I.
take $30,000 to do a study.
And I'm going to assume that maybe that's an overestimation of which we've, I mean, Maggie can use this money for many things. It could, whatever's left over could go to the installation of the solar. But I am totally speaking off the top of my head, so do not take anything I'm saying into account. I think this is an important article, and I think the town will get good results from it. Okay, I'm going to move on to our next article, which is Jean Krieger is going to talk to us about. It's Article 10, which is the CPA funding, but F is specifically about Lincoln Field. So, Jean, take it away.
Okay, I mean, I have no slides. What this is a request essentially to resurface another field, Lincoln Field, with plastic turf. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time telling you why that is a bad idea. It's about $1.4 million, about $900,000 is preparation, and the other $400,000 or $500,000 is to actually purchase the turf. It's only $900,000 that comes from CPA, because the CPA will not allow money to be spent on turf. And nor am I going to propose an amendment as I did last year when I suggested that instead of getting synthetic turf, we go with grass. But one thing that we could do in order to register our opposition, and at least have an opportunity to vote against this without having to vote against the other items on Article 10, is to ask that the question be divided so that we could vote on that alone. And I may do that. That would at least give us the opportunity to register our concern. Also, to sort of lay the groundwork, because the town's plans include in the future the demolition of Old Harrington and the construction of 2 more synthetic turf fields there. There's a minor justification for considering keeping turf now at Lincoln Field, since there's some apparent urgency about needing fields when the high school is going to be built. And if one were going to really want to not do them with synthetic turf anymore, but to do them with grass, it would probably be recapping the fields, which is going to take much longer, delay any kind of installation. So there's a little bit of justification for allowing continued use of turf at Lincoln Field. But in my mind, there's absolutely no justification for using turf when you're de novo on, regular dirt. All that I'm suggesting is that there be an opportunity for people to speak their mind with regard to the continued use of synthetic turf. And the way to do that is to divide the question.
Yeah, and I support that. Avram, you have a question?
I do. So my recollection is that at one point, the turf project at Lincoln Field, the one we passed last year, was put on hold by the Recreation Department. And I believe it's now off hold and they are proceeding. But were they ever able to come up with a more environmentally friendly form of artificial turf?
Yeah, and the person to speak to that is actually Cindy, because Cindy chaired the task force that came to the consensus with regard to what the conditions of the field were. So I'll let Cindy cover that. But there are some improvements. But yet basically it's going to still be plastic grass sitting there that is made with PFAS.
Yeah, thanks, Jean. Ricky, if it's okay if I just speak
Oh,
to
yeah,
that.
go ahead.
And Avram, thanks for the question. So that working group did determine that at least two or three pretty significant items. One being that instead of using black crumb rubber as the infill, they've changed the specification to require a natural it's a tree material that's sort of whittled down, like a shaped tree material, wood chip material that's shaped specifically, and that's what we are going to be used. So that will number one, get rid of the toxic black rubber, and number two, significantly lower the temperature of the field in hot weather. So that is one thing that the group together decided that was going to be put into the RFP, into the specifications for the field. Number two, that we would get total organofluorine testing, which, if anybody is following PFAS, and that there's 10,000 or more, 12,000 different compounds of PFAS, and they were going to only test for like the top 6 that sort of came from, I think, the original sort of California, Massachusetts specifications. So we are going to at least get information. We are going to get information and data on what's actually in those compounds, in those grass fields. And then third, we put in the specifications that they are not allowed, because there is no proof right now, there is no actual recycling facilities for all of this plastic. The best of the bad choices to dispose of the plastic that's coming off is for it to be landfilled, not to be incinerated, there is no recycling, not to be what's the term, like chemical recycling or advanced recycling. It's just another form of incineration. So we got that into the specifications as well. I'm looking forward to getting test results and having, you know, our Board of Health and other experts take a look at that. But it's a good question. I would actually recommend anyone asking at town meeting to get you know, town staff to confirm that this is in the specification of the fields we approved last year, and will be in the specifications of the fields that are up to be voted on at this time. And I would also ask for, you know, a report on the testing results once we got it to town meeting. I think that would be a really good thing to do. Thanks.
May I ask just one quick follow-up? But am I correct that natural grass is still better? Or more environmentally friendly?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Yeah. You can't beat it. So Cindy, thank you for that explanation. That was very helpful. And you answered my question about where are we putting this stuff. Except I don't know. So if we're putting it in a landfill, where is that landfill located? And who are we going to be affecting the groundwater when we bury this stuff? And that would be a question I would have. I'm not expecting that you have the answer to that question, but that is a question I have, because you throw a bunch of chemicals underground, water leaches through, goes to our groundwater, which is extremely important if we want to keep drinking water in this planet. So that would be something else I would like to know. Jean, I hope you separate it out. I certainly support you in that and would like the opportunity to talk about this on its own worth or merits, just to have another opportunity. When things are lumped together, it becomes very difficult, but it's very easy to separate out in town. Once we're in town meeting, it's very easy to separate something out. So any other questions on 10F? F? Yes, 10F. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move to Mark, who's going to talk about amending the general bylaw on noise. And at this point, we're going to talk about the gas leaf blowers. And I know Todd Rhodes is also on. So Todd, I want you to jump in wherever you would like. Go ahead, Mark. No introductions needed, I hope. Mark Sandine started a long time ago with GWAC, went to Sustainable Lexington, now is on our select board, having our back. So thank you, Mark.
So thank you. I just thought I might review a little bit of the history to sort of set things in context for this particular town meeting warrant article. And so these are some slides that were presented to town meeting 3 years ago. And basically says the problem with gas leaf blowers is that every gas leaf blower violates current state and local law, which says that you cannot have noise 10 dB over ambient. And of course, every gas leaf blower violates that. And of course, there's serious health consequences of workers breathing highly toxic air pollution. And so the solution is electric leaf blowers, and there are a wide number of makes and models of electric leaf blowers today that have the same performance as the most popular gas-powered leaf blowers, and they are 64 dBA as opposed to 75 or higher dBA as the gas leaf blowers, and that's compliant with state and local law, and the operators get to breathe clean air. And from a climate perspective, the electric leaf blowers generate 19 times fewer greenhouse gas emissions. But what a lot of people think about, what's the difference between 64 decibels and 75 decibels? Well, what it actually means is that there's about 13 times larger area affected by a gas-powered leaf blower than an electric leaf blower. People don't really get the idea that the dBA scale is a logarithmic scale, and there's 3 dB is a doubling of noise pressure. And so what that means is that when you have one person using a 75 dB gas leaf blower, they're affecting 13 times more residents in the area than somebody who's using a 64 dB electric leaf blower. And so the Noise Advisory Committee came to the conclusion that noise bylaws are unenforceable. If you have to go out and measure noise before and after, you're not going to have a successful enforcement. And so their proposal was to propose, their solution was to propose a 3-year phase out. And in November 18th of 2021, town meeting by 85% vote passed this 3-year phase out, which would have commercial phase out in 2025. And at the time, there's a lot of discussion about, well, landscapers were saying, well, there's a much higher cost, upfront cost, because each one of these leaf blowers needs a number of different batteries. And what we showed at the time 3 years ago was that electric leaf blowers were going to be substantially lower total life cycle cost than continuing to go with gas leaf blowers. At the time, this is 3 years ago, the batteries were in this study were $194 a battery. And I just checked tonight what the cost from the manufacturer for this same battery that we were that was selling for $194 in 2021. It's selling for $140 today. And there are sort of OEM replacement batteries that you can buy on Amazon for this same battery. They look almost the same for $100. So in the time frame between when town meeting passed this and tonight, the cost of batteries has dropped about half. And so that's sort of all I wanted to sort of say about the history from a slide perspective. But what I also wanted to say is after town meeting, you probably all remember that the landscapers successfully submitted a referendum vote and asked the entire town of Lexington to vote at a special election on whether the town approved this town meeting vote. And by 55% the town referendum vote approved in March, almost 3 years ago today, March 7th of 2022. And so what's coming to town meeting today is, should we delay the commercial leaf blower phase out date by 1 year? And my perspective on that is that we had 85% of town meeting members voting in favor of this. We had 55% of Lexington residents voting on this. And I would suggest that you need to have an overwhelming reason to overturn the elected, to overturn an election result. And so when we asked the town manager why he has proposed this, he says, well, we think there's an availability issue. And so the select board asked the town manager to come back with data showing that there was an availability issue. And as recently as Monday night, Dave Pincinot came to the select board and said that yes, that you can buy all of these electric leaf blowers today. They're in stock. This is also my experience. I've checked the availability of the top 10 highest performing electric leaf blowers, and every one of them are in stock today from at least 3 different sources. So from my perspective, the landscapers have had 2 years to get ready for this. There's still a whole nother year ahead. And I would suggest that when there are electric leaf blowers available today that have the equivalent performance of gas leaf blowers, and that they can be bought in today, it does not make sense to delay. So I am the only select board member right now who is opposing this particular delay. There is one other select board member who's waiting for the debate on town meeting.
Avram, I see you have a question, and I would ask if Mark and Todd have any sort of date, anything you can throw up that shows the availability. Let's do that. Mark, I have seen some slides that show the availability, and I know that that is real. It was asked for last night for anybody who was at the town meeting information meeting. It was asked what the data is, and it was said there was just no data. So I think that's difficult.
So we have to be careful what was said is, so there was a question asked, is there any data showing that there is an availability issue? And the answer came back, no, there isn't any data showing there is an availability issue. It's
Okay.
not saying there isn't any data, it's saying that there is no data saying there is an availability issue.
Okay.
And yeah, in a previous select board meeting, Dave Pinsino said, the quote in the select board minutes is along the lines of, if he was to buy in bulk, he would not be able to get everything he needed immediately. So to Mark's earlier point, we're 2 years into the transition. There's another year to go. If you want to replace everything the DPW currently owns today, you might have to wait a couple weeks. Yes, but it's there is no evidence provided that there is any significant availability issue.
Right. And the
Good.
town manager mentioned that there's 80 landscapers in town. And if each one of them has an average of 5 crews, and each one of those crews has an average of 5 leaf blowers, that's 2,000 leaf blowers. This is not a meaningful number of leaf blowers in the national economy of leaf blowers. So, the town of Lexington is not going to impact, even if everybody bought 2,000 leaf blowers tomorrow, it's not going to impact the production rates of leaf blowers on a national scale.
And get to your questions, but just quick additional information from all the good things Mark just said. The other good context information, and this was from information that Dan Koretz had sent to me a while back. Cambridge approved their leaf blower ban in December of last year, so December of 23. So their ban will be instituted March 2026. So a much shorter transition time than we have provided. Belmont passed their bylaw after Lexington. They're going to be January 2026. But again, it was a shorter transition time than Lexington provided. And Arlington is March of the same time as ours, March 2025. And they also passed it after Lexington did. So other towns are doing the same thing with shorter transition times than we have provided. So we're not alone.
So I would add a couple other things, right? I mentioned that a delay in enforcement would violate the trust that the residents who voted to approve this bylaw, but any delay also would harm the workers who are going to be forced to breathe these toxic fumes and have another year of noise causing hearing loss. And so I would suggest that rather than proposing to delay enforcing a vote for a year because landscapers are concerned that this is coming soon, perhaps a better course of action would be to help raise awareness of the availability of these highly viable commercial leaf blowers that are currently available and have the same kind of performance as the most popular gas powered leaf blowers. So that's how I'm thinking about this.
It's a great suggestion to make sure we get the outreach to the people who need to make the purchases. Avram, you have a question?
I do. So I guess I'll address this to Mark, but if
Sure.
anybody else has the answer, that's okay with me. So the gas-powered leaf blower ban is the only climate change slash global warming slash noise mitigation article I've ever voted against.
Yeah.
And so and I already know the answer to this question, but when you trace this, there are two key components in lithium-ion batteries, cobalt and lithium. And so, for example, when you trace this back to the source and start with the mining process, um, isn't it correct that there are very severe environmental and human impacts resulting from that? I mean, there's a whole list. But is that true or not true?
Are you asking, are there environmental
Yes,
impacts?
they're not here in Lexington. I'm talking about in the countries where the lithium and the ion is mined. Are there human and environmental impacts from that?
Yes.
Okay,
So,
so
so the thing that we presented 3 or 4 years ago, and I can probably try to find, I've got this on my computer someplace. But if I recall correctly, to outfit an entire landscapers team with what a lot of people don't realize when you think lithium ion batteries, people tend to think that these batteries are primarily made out of lithium. They're not primarily made out of lithium. It's a very small amount of lithium that's used in these lithium ion batteries. So if you look at the total amount of lithium that an entire landscapers team would need to have in order to run all these batteries, it comes out to like 4 pounds of lithium or something like that. And if you look at the amount of greenhouse gas emissions and the amount of toxic material that comes from drilling and processing for the petroleum that goes into these things, I'll dig it out for you, Avram. I'll send it to you, but it's like 2 orders of magnitude more, 3 orders of magnitude more in terms of the toxic impact of mining for the material that you need in order to run these things. So yeah, yes, there's
actually,
bad things for both, but it's like 3 orders magnitude worse for fossil fuels.
well, okay, I guess you're entitled to your opinion and I'm entitled to my opinion. And I'm probably still going to be, when I vote in favor of this, it's really not going to be to give the landscapers an extra year. It's because of how I feel about lithium-ion batteries and the entire mining process. But thank you. That was a very enlightening answer. Thanks.
I would encourage you to think about the drilling of fossil fuels and that impact as well.
And I'll second that, and I assume there's many of us here who think about the impact of fossil fuels and have been for many, many years. And the headlines I see, because this is in the news in terms of cars, is that if you trace all of what you need to build an electric vehicle versus all the other things and putting it in internal combustion engine, you come out with electric as a better solution across the board. So
it's a better solution here in Lexington and maybe in the United States. It's not a better solution for the people in the countries where the lithium and the cobalt come from. They're the ones who are bearing the brunt of our peace and quiet and our clean air.
Okay, Avram, I did find the document that compares these two. Let me see if I can figure out how to show it to you.
Jerry, Sally, and Ruth, I see your hands up. We'll get to it in a second if Mark can share this.
Okay, can you see that? So this is, I was remembering correctly, Avram. So there's 4 pounds of lithium needed for the 8 batteries for each one of these leaf blowers. And the other thing I didn't mention to you, but these batteries are 95% recyclable. But the water that's used, that's permanently contaminated during oil and gas drilling, that's 7,000 gallons for the equivalent amount of gas you'd need to run in this leaf blower. And so, yes, we can do better on mining of lithium, but we need to be looking at, so if you look at it from a CO2 perspective, 24,000 pounds of CO2 emissions, 19 times more than from using it from powering from the grid, assuming that they're just using conventional grid electricity in Massachusetts. And then this is the toxic materials. Turns out there's 3,000 pounds of toxic materials that come out of the leaf blower that gets breathed by the workers. So you have 4 pounds of lithium, but that, yes, has some impact on workers, but you have 3,000 pounds of toxic chemicals that the workers have to breathe. So that's what when I think about this, I absolutely think you're absolutely right to raise issues about lithium. But when I think about it in terms of what's going to have the biggest health impact for workers, I say this is moving to electric leaf blowers is going to do that.
Jerry?
Thank you. Hey, Mark, thanks so much for driving this and all the great information. Will you be recounting your or talking about the false supply chain problem issue in terms of, 2,000 leaf blowers and batteries should be a drop in the bucket compared to overall manufacturing capability? Will you be talking about that at town meeting?
I will have an opportunity to speak at town meeting, which will be much limited to what I'm saying tonight, because I think you only have 2 minutes at town meeting, maybe 3.
But if you're asked that question specifically about the supply chain issue, will you speak to that?
I will answer any question anybody asks me.
Great. And just thank you. And just to elaborate on what was said earlier, I'm the one who spoke last night at the meeting, and I didn't go into detail, and Mark will confirm this, but at the 2 times that the DPW director spoke, he talked about going to one distributor and asking if that distributor could satisfy these needs, 2,000 blowers plus batteries plus chargers. And of course, that distributor probably couldn't do it in any short amount of time. Do you know, or does anybody know, but Mark, I'm looking to you, has anybody just called the manufacturer up and said of one of these, good leaf blowers and said, hey, would you like to supply, 10,000 leaf blowers? And could you do that in a couple of months' time? I think that would sort of put a stake in this zombie issue that keeps coming up.
I have called them. I haven't asked if I could place an order for 2,000, but all of them have confirmed that they have them in stock and readily available.
Okay, that's beautiful, because thank you. Thank you so much, Mark.
Sally?
I'd like to go back to Abram for a minute, and Mark and Ricky, some of you may know more about this than I, but I do know there's toxicity involved in mining for lithium and other minerals. However, I believe that there's really strong research going on right now to create batteries that will not involve toxic chemicals, toxic minerals. Can you confirm that, Mark or Cindy or Ricky?
There is intense efforts to use less lithium in lithium-ion batteries. There's intense efforts to use less cobalt. There's intense efforts to use less nickel in all these batteries. But I'm not sure. I haven't heard of any lithium-ion batteries that don't have lithium in them. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure about eliminating it completely.
There's a guy at MIT whose name I cannot remember, who is developing batteries that do not involve these minerals. how they can be utilized.
There's plenty of batteries that do that. They tend to be much heavier. They tend to be much larger. Form energy is basically having this very long battery that can last for 100 hours, can discharge for 100 hours. It's made out of iron. It basically rusts iron and unrusts iron. So it's made out of iron. So it is possible to come up with batteries, but it would be much too large to put in a leaf blower.
Ruth, you have a question?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I've noticed that not only landscapers, but also gutter cleaning companies are using leaf blowers. And I'm wondering, are they gas or are they electric?
Yes.
What is yes?
Yes to both.
To both?
I see people using electric and I see people using gas.
How can you tell the difference if you're a customer?
What you can usually tell the difference is they have a very different the gas leaf
Noise.
blowers tend to have are much louder, but they tend to also to be a lower frequency. So the noise that comes out of gas leaf blowers is a lower frequency, and because it's lower frequency, it penetrates windows and doors and walls much easier and travels longer distance than higher frequency. So what you're going to hear is the difference between a two-stroke engine, and you're going to hear a difference between a sort of higher speed, higher frequency electric motor. So you think about the noise from a lawnmower versus the noise from one of those little weed whackers or something that you hear.
I'm wondering, are people asking these gutter companies what kind of leaf blowers they're using? Or should that be
I
a
hope so.
question
I hope so.
we should ask?
Right.
We
You know,
we
this-
should
Ask your
Yeah.
landscaper to please use electric.
yeah.
Thank you.
I think
Yeah,
working with your landscapers.
I had a contractor come to my house to do something not to do with landscaping, and don't remember why, but he pulled out a gas-powered leaf blower and started using it in my house, and I ran out and gave him my electric leaf blower and said, I want you to use this.
Nancy, you have a question?
I do. I had the same experience with a mason who was using a gas-powered leaf blower. And what I'm wondering is, does this bylaw apply to people other than landscapers?
Yes, it says you can't use a gas leaf blower.
Okay.
That's good for all of us to know, so we can take that into account as we're seeing people working around the neighborhood.
A follow-up to that is, I assume that the town notifies, has really advertised that this ban is going to take effect or has taken effect for that period of time in the summer to landscapers. How do they communicate that to other contractors, or is it up to the homeowner to do that?
I don't know that the town is attempting to communicate to other contractors. The town has taken, at the select board's request on multiple occasions, has taken efforts to make sure that they're communicating to landscapers. But I don't know that there's any outreach to, say, people who are cleaning gutters or, doing driveways or something.
Nancy, I think that's an excellent question for the floor of town meeting, or a letter to the town manager. How do we reach other workers who use gas leaf blowers for other than landscaping?
Yeah, and I don't disagree with Mark, but I'm looking at the language of the bylaw right now, and it is a little bit nuanced. I think Nancy might have a point, because it does say the outdoor use of landscape maintenance equipment by commercial landscapers.
Yeah.
And then the use of gas-powered leaf blowers is restricted in the periods, blah, blah, blah. Oh, landscape construction work shall be governed by, so it does talk a lot about landscapers and work, so it's.
I would guess that the town manager is going to be loath to try to enforce anything other than landscapers.
Yeah. Oh, and actually to the enforcement point, since Mark brought it up, a key thing to keep in mind is somewhere buried in the budgets is what I believe to be a part-time enforcement officer. So the town wants to hire someone who would be the individual who would then respond to reports of landscapers who are using gas-powered leaf blowers out of season. Right now that is the police are responding to that, which has not been all that effective. And so hopefully this new enforcement officer would provide the resource needed to move this along.
Right. And the intent is to hire previous town employee who has retired and has been working with the leaf blowers in his past life. So has a relationship with these leaf blowers.
Thank you, everybody. I know this will be a big one at town meeting. I'm going to try to move this along. I said we'd be done at 8:30. We may go a little bit over. I'm able to stay a little bit longer. Tom, even though you're next in order in number, I put you at the bottom because of your slow bus. So I'm going to move on to Article 38, which Cindy will talk to us about, which is a slight change to our fossil fuel bylaw, which, by the way, goes into effect March 21st.
Yes, sorry about that. So can you say, I'm not going to go through the full presentation, but I'm sharing the presentation right now, although I'm having a hard time being able to look at it myself. Give me a second.
It's there.
Here we go. Yes. So yes, what town meeting overwhelmingly passed 3 years ago, we are finally going to be able to administer beginning March 21st of this year. So back in September of last year, Maggie Peard, our sustainability and resilience officer, applied to DOER to become part of this program. And we were accepted into the program in December. But as the DOER, the Department of Energy Resources, made a couple of requests to the town to make changes to our bylaw. And one was to be they had the same ask of all towns, of all municipalities that were part of it. And the other ask was because we were the only one we were sort of an outlier. So they are sort of trying to make the bylaw more uniform across all the municipalities. So I'm not going to read through all of this. I just gave you that background. What the important thing, the two changes is not allowing fossil fuel infrastructure or piping to be included in new construction or major renovations, gut renovations, or very large additions for indoor cooking or indoor fireplaces. And so that's the one piece. And as I mentioned, we're the only community that has this, and so by removing it, we will align with the other communities. One very, very important thing to note is that we have a lot more data about the health consequences of indoor gas cooking use, and so we think that it's a good thing to get rid of. Although, because passed the specialized code last year that went into effect in January of this year, it's very unlikely that there would be a lot of new construction that would want to use this, is our understanding, because if they did decide to use it under the specialized code, they would have to add a minimum amount of solar, or a maximum amount of solar, depending on the size of the dwelling unit on the residential side. So it's a very simple change. The other change, as I mentioned, was to add large additions, excuse me, to the definition of major renovation. As I said before, this would align with what they're asking all of the communities, and it would align with the definitions in the other code, stretch code and specialized code, building code, state building codes that have passed in the last couple of years. And I think that's about it. So I can take questions, but the most important part is that it's a small change. We want to sort of play nicely with the DOER because this is a very important program to gather data and to show that this really can be done, so that we can expand it to more than 10 communities in the state. And staff has indicated that the impact will be very small.
Thank you, Cindy. Any questions? I don't see any. So, okay, let's move on to Marcy and integrated pest management resolution. So Marcy, if you don't have slides, that's fine. Just you can talk your way through it, or you can share some slides if you want. We don't have time for the whole presentation, but if you can.
Okay, let's see if I can share these slides. If I have trouble with this, then we'll skip it.
You should be able to.
Yeah. It's just...
And while Marcy's bringing this up, I'd like to thank her for bringing this really important article to town meeting.
Okay, is that all visible?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So, and I'll just introduce myself. I'm Marcy Semenska. I'm the founder of Save Lexington Wildlife. I'm here to talk to you about Article 40, Integrated Pest Management Resolution. I'm bringing this article to town for three main reasons. One, the use of anticoagulant rat poisons are having disastrous effects on wildlife, pets, and children. Two, there are readily available alternatives. And three, Lexington residents care about the ecosystem, so we should join the growing list of communities that are taking action on this issue. I also want to say, given that I'm speaking to the Climate Action Network, that rat populations are increasing. One reason is due to climate change. And in the year 2022, pest control professionals put down 530,000 pounds of eschars in Massachusetts. And it's important to note that these rodenticides are a fossil fuel product. So due to all these reasons, we really need better strategies for dealing with rodents. Anticoagulant rodenticides, especially eschars, are powerful. A single dose can kill an animal. Not only do these poisons kill the target animal, but they are passed up the food chain. They kill raptors, foxes, coyotes, skunks, possums, and more. These poisons have become the go-to solution for rodent control and are thus pervasive. The great news is that there are readily available alternatives. Best practices suggest that a strategy known as integrated pest management, IPM, is the most effective approach to preventing rodent problems. IPM uses a holistic approach. It prioritizes prevention first and then provides for treatment options that range from the non-toxic to the more toxic, with lots of options in between. Article 40 is asking for the town of Lexington to develop IPM policies that prohibit the use of anticoagulant poisons, including eschars, on town-owned land and properties. The article also asks for public education around the dangers of eschars. Given the disastrous effects on eschars and the fact that there are alternatives, I hope that everybody will support Article 40. The residents of Lexington are overwhelmingly in support of this article. There's 100 yard signs around town. The select board voted unanimously to support it, and the Conservation Commission voted unanimously to support it.
Cheers. Any questions on this article? Avram? Avram, are you having trouble unmuting?
No, I just
There you
forgot.
go. Okay.
So my question about this is that I'm, in full support of this, but I'm also thinking about the extremely detailed list of the kinds of blasting and so on that's being added in Article 29. So I guess did you think about, instead of just doing this one, just coming up with the list of all the terrible things that are being used to kill wildlife? And I'm also specifically thinking about a few months ago, there was a problem with using a certain kind of trap for foxes in Willow's Woods. And I'd rather I'm still going to vote for this, but it just seems like there's so many things that are going on that harm wildlife that it would probably be useful to just ban them all at once.
I think that might be a hard problem. I think sometimes when you try to do everything, it's hard to get anything done. As far as that fox that was caught in the leg hold trap, those are actually illegal in the state. They're still looking for the person that did that. So at least for that example, it's already against the law. As far, our group is currently focused on this SGARs because these pesticides are becoming so pervasive and it's affecting so many species that it seems like something we can actually do something about.
Okay. Thank you, Marcy, for coming tonight, and thank you for bringing this article forward. We're going to go to Article 45, Fran. And I'd like to thank Fran for bringing this forward, which I think many people thought already was being done in Lexington, but as it turns out, it wasn't. Fran, you may be muted because Fran, are you muted, Fran? You are. I'm trying to unmute you, but I'm having trouble.
Okay.
Fran, are you? Oh, there you go.
There we go. Could you see my slides when I?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, you could. Okay, great. All right. So there we go. So I won't show all of these, but you might wonder why this is on the list for LexCAN. And I think everything that everybody has talked about is sort of a view that you have of the natural world and what our responsibility should be toward it. And so this article really incorporates this big picture view of, how we should be when we think about, the ecosystems that we live within, that we really are a part of nature and not apart from it. So I'll just go through this very quickly, but yes, I was really surprised to learn that we do not celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day in Lexington. We celebrate Columbus Day. And the more I've learned about Columbus, the less I like celebrating Columbus Day. So, so I got together with some people in Lexington who are Native people. And the one on the left is Stephanie Ryan. And the one in the middle is Pastor Miracle. from the Christ Revolution Church. If you've gone to the interfaith services in Lexington, sometimes he comes with his regalia from his Mohawk upbringing, and he says the prayer in the Mohawk language. So we do have Native people who actually are living in Lexington, and we know that we are living on land that people used for generations and hundreds of thousands of years, probably. And the way they used the land, they appreciated the fact that everything that they needed came from that land and that they needed to care for it. That's sort of what all of you on the screen really are, attentive to now, that we're trying to care for the earth. Just a few slides to remind people that we have received a lot of gifts from Native people. Even our Constitution is based on the Iroquois model of government. So there are many reasons that we should honor Native values. And Stephanie speaks to some of these others, but I speak to the one about environment, caring for our land, air, and water. And I think that's something that our town has adopted and that we are trying to do through all of the resolutions that you have put forward. And I think by celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day, that we would honor that commitment and realize that it really didn't start with us. It really goes way back to the people who ancestrally used this land. And so we sort of bring forward the voices of youth. And these are two Native kids. This is Stephanie's son, saying that he really would like to see Indigenous Peoples Day celebrated and that it would affect the next 7 generations. And again, that's the kind of thinking that we are doing now, is what's going to happen to our kids and our grandkids. Another young man, this is Pastor Brent's son. And of course, he's got his lacrosse sweatshirt on. This is a native game that Pastor Brent's tribe actually invented. But he was talking about that it would be great for the people of Lexington to see that his family and he are real. And believe it or not, there's a high percentage of people in the US that believe that Native people are all dead. So I think we owe it to them because of some of the things that we personally did not do, but our ancestors certainly did, in terms of taking land, in terms of suppressing culture. I think we need to change. So just an example of many of the Native people who have made contributions, including in the lower right is Joan Lester. She's a Lexington resident, and I think she's the person that I first met here who sort of introduced me to the idea that Native people really still are living in Massachusetts, and she has a special relationship with Wampanoag people. She designed an exhibit with Wampanoag elders at the Children's Museum, and we used many of her ideas in the schools in Lexington. And again, just trying to teach kids to take care of the environment. I've tried to do that for my whole life. So that's one of the reasons why I'm interested in moving this forward. A lot of our local towns, our surrounding towns, have adopted Indigenous Peoples Day, and President Biden as well. But here's the resolution, and it just says that the second Monday of October shall henceforth be commemorated in Lexington as Indigenous Peoples Day in honor of the resilience and contributions of Indigenous peoples in our town, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and our country. And so we're asking to rename the second Monday of October to Indigenous Peoples Day. And I think most people think that that's a really good idea. The only people who have some hesitation are Italians, I would say. When they find out what Columbus really did, he went, part of his reason for coming to the New World was to take slaves and gold. And when he couldn't find enough gold, he took more slaves back to Europe. And though people may say, well, that's what they did in those days, still, we shouldn't be celebrating somebody who did that and had such an exploitative point of view, gimme, gimme, gimme. I mean, that's why we're all in trouble today. We really want to honor people who have that more cyclical approach and the appreciation for the natural world. So I did add this because this was the objection for one of the selectmen, was he was personally and very honestly concerned about what this might say about Italian Americans. And actually, federally and the state of Massachusetts has recognized October as Italian American Heritage Month. So I've just added this in because we all agreed that we should celebrate Italian heritage, but we should not be celebrating Christopher Columbus. We should be celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day. So, I can't speak Delaware or Mohawk, but Stephanie can, and hopefully she'll be there tomorrow night to thank everybody in her language. So there we go. Any questions? Is Mark still there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you know what the outcome was at town meeting? Not town meeting, at the selectmen? Did you get a unanimous support or did?
No.
No, really?
So, we
Wow.
have still to come on the agenda for one of the select board members wants to talk about Italian, some sort of celebration,
Oh,
so there's some, that hasn't been resolved yet at the select board. It was on the agenda for Monday night, but delayed to a future
they
date.
didn't get it. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. We know, yeah. We had a very good conversation, so I'm confident that he'll come through one way or the other.
And I'm confident that you'll get the wide support by town meeting. But
Yeah.
it is town
I
meeting, so
think, it's a case of education, I think. I mean, I never knew any of this stuff, before a few years ago. So, when you know something, you need to change your mind on things, and we'll see whether there's a big issue. But I do think that, that whole idea of how you view the natural world, is it for you to use and not even worry about what happens to trash or, waste? Or is it for you to care about and honor and feel that you're a part of it, so.
Avram, let's have a quick question. I know only because it is already 6:38 and we still need to get to one more article. So go ahead, Avram.
It is a quick question. I'm just wondering if the assertion that this is, for whatever reason, unpalatable to Italian Americans, if it turned out that the debate at town meeting, even with a minority, goes in that direction, would it be better to postpone this until we can? I don't think that looks good if, a minority of town meeting members for a good reason like that is sort of pushing this through. So would it be something you'd consider if that happened to postpone this? And I am voting yes.
Good.
I'm going to suggest that Fran think about that one a bit, and rather than have to answer that on the spot like this, only because
if it's voted, almost unanimously, is there an issue? No.
Well,
no, and if it,
the
I think
issue-
Avram's
yeah,
talking about whether we get 55% for and 45% against. What would you do? And again, I'm going to suggest, Fran, if you want to consider that.
I haven't.
Yeah, I know that's why I'm suggesting
Oh.
that's something for Fran to think about. Tom, let's finally get to Article 31, prohibits single-serve plastic water bottles. And I know everything I sent out to you all said the the plastic, I forget what the other article is, that is single-use plastic, and that has been IP'd, which means indefinitely postponed. It means Tom could bring it back at another point in time. It is just not going to be voted on at this town meeting. But Tom, take it away.
Okay, so Article 31 is to ban the sale of single-use plastic water bottles, PET water bottles of 1 liter or less. I just felt that it was a no-brainer in my mind. Water is readily available in Lexington, and it's a very high quality. It takes a lot of petroleum to make the plastic water bottles. It costs taxpayers a lot of money to dispose of the plastic water bottles, and recycle rates are very, very low. And even if this plastic is recycled, generally, from what I understand, it is only downcycled, so it can be made into other products, but it cannot be made into new bottles. So that I want to ban the sale of single-use water bottles, and it's really a growing movement. A lot of towns in Massachusetts, Needham, Concord, most of the Cape, all of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard have similar bans. So we're not breaking any ground here. And the water can be sold in aluminum containers, which is my preference, or glass, which both of those are easily recycled and reused. So it's pretty simple. I think that we should support this.
Janet, you have a question?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm part of Lex Zero Waste, and I know that you, Tom, have talked to Laura Swain as well, and Tina. But you know, we talked to people in Arlington who have a water bottle ban, and their experience has been that stores have gotten around the ban by selling it in cartons, cartons of water. And so my question to you is, and I don't know, a lot of people do not know that what we think of as cardboard cartons, like milk containers and things like that, actually have plastic, are lined with plastic. And so they're not recyclable, and they have plastic. So if the goal is to reduce plastic, is there a way that we could amend the motion to include or to also ban any kind of single-use container that has plastic?
I'd be willing to entertain a friendly amendment to ban the cardboard cartons. I think that'll make it a tougher sell because I talked to all the places in Concord that sell water, and they all are using, or most of them are using, the cardboard. So it'd be a bigger deal, but I think that I would be absolutely happy to accept a friendly amendment to ban the cardboard bottles. I don't think I'm ready to go with all plastic single use because that I don't think that's going to work. There's just too many things that I think there's too many headwinds against that one, but for now.
Are you talking about, I mean, I was just talking about water.
Oh, okay.
Any container, water containers. So I guess, and this is maybe a question for other more experienced people, about whether it makes sense to try to amend it and see if the amendment passes at town meeting, or to try to introduce it as part of the motion. I mean, a friendly amendment is essentially having the motion, just amending the motion without it going through the process, right? So I guess my question is, do we want to focus simply on the PET because it's very clear, or is our goal to try to reduce plastic waste, especially for all water bottles, all water containers, single use?
Okay, yes, I would like to reduce the use of plastic in the distribution of water, period. I wasn't aware of the cardboard until after I'd written the article. It seems like this could be the first step, and eliminating the cardboard containers could be next year.
Guess I'm interested in what others think about it.
So, well, go ahead, Laura.
In researching what other towns are doing, like I know Arlington was told that the cardboard type containers were not banned by their bylaw, and therefore they're changing it. I think Nantucket has the most comprehensive and probably is going farther than what Tom is interested in doing, and I kind of agree in just sort of sensing what this community is interested, this meaning Lexington is interested in doing, like, let's try and get something passed before we cover all beverages and everything but aluminum and glass. So I would recommend, but I would love to hear what other people think about including the cartons in the ban, because they are harder to recycle than the PET.
Well, does anybody else have any opinions about, well, let's go to the rest of the questions and then circle back to this issue on whether we want to encourage Tom to enhance his article, the motion to include the cardboard that's, I gather, lined with plastic, like milk bottles. So let's move on to Avram, Mark, and then Christine, and then circle back. Is that okay with everyone?
So I think this is a quick question. The IP Article 30 had a schedule of fines attached to it. Is there a reason why this doesn't have a similar schedule of fines?
I just wanted to, actually, I took the wording from the Concord resolution, and I just copied that.
So can I ask Mark, if in a case like that, where there's not a specific list, would it be up to the select board to determine what the punitive measures would be?
I think it's outlined in the bylaw. I'd have to go back and look at it, but I haven't read the bylaw in 2 weeks, but I thought it was outlined in the bylaw.
Do you mean the bylaw that is
The
being
proposed bylaw, yeah, the proposed.
There was a schedule of fines in Article 30, which has been IP'd. There is no schedule of fines in Article 31. And that's my question.
I'd have to look.
That I guess that's your answer, Avram. Christine?
Oh, hi, thank you. I've just introduced myself. I'm Christine Goulet. I'm a teacher at Diamond Middle School. I am the sustainability champion and the faculty advisor to the Green Team. So many people here I recognize, so good to see you all. So I just want to speak on the behalf of the the water bottles. I would equate it with the plastic bag ban and how then people then start using the paper bags. I think as we want people to do is to produce less waste. So I would be for amending the article as proposed to not have the carton boxes, which actually aren't, like you said, are not recyclable unless you're west, Springfield and west in Massachusetts. So I think if the goal here is to reduce waste, let's get rid of options that cannot be recycled and go for the aluminum cans, which Diamond has been using this school year. But there's been some more plastic water bottles, and I can speak for the waste that I would be so happy if there were no if the town passed this, that we could really put an end to the plastic bottle waste at school, but to replace it with aluminum cans would be great. So that's just my thinking there. So thank you.
Thank you. Good to hear from you. Cindy?
Yeah, thanks. So I just clarification in terms of, because I was part of the group that passed some earlier plastic reduction bylaws in town. And actually now I'm just saying, thank you, Laura just posted it in the chat. There are 3 sections in our plastic reduction bylaws right now, and they all point to the same sort of enforcement and potential fines, which point to another section of the town bylaws. So you might get questions. I'm just saying you might get questions about why aren't you doing it the same as the other plastic reduction bylaws that the town has already passed. But my the question that I had, you mentioned, and that's great. I think that's great that you talked to sellers or establishments in Concord. But have you talked to any of the sort of establishments, grocery stores, sort of any CVS, here in town about it, and sort of what their reactions were, and because maybe they said, oh well, yeah, we know that we have to do this in Concord, or we know that we have to do this in Needham. I mean, at least for the chain stores. But what sort of feedback have you gotten from that?
All right, I've only spoken with a few establishments. I'm going to do some more tomorrow and Friday. But the general feeling, the response I got was that they didn't really care for it. It's just another wrinkle in their business. And who wants to make their life harder? I don't want to make their life harder, but I think that the transition will be fairly painless because these other containers are readily available. Does that answer your question? So I wasn't surprised at all at the response. The guy at Avenue Delicatessen was the most hostile. Alexander's was like, I sell a lot of water. That's what people buy nowadays. What do you want me to do? And I said, well, sell it in aluminum. And he said, well, I don't have it, but he can get it.
Thank you.
The guy at the market in Concord did allow. He thought we should force all the establishments to have recycle bins. I think that is also something that would really be helpful.
Olga?
Hi. So I would like to follow up on Cindy's comments. The places I'm particularly concerned about is places like Pete's and all the new bakeries and the little cafes and this and that. And particularly as the warm season is coming and we're going to get a lot of bike traffic. My conjecture is that bike people in particular are the folk who pick up their water bottles. And I certainly hate water bottles as much as anybody on this list. So I would love to see them banned. On the other hand, given the difficulty we've had keeping businesses in town, I am worried that we now have several new businesses and we would really like them to succeed. And I would like to make it as easy as possible for them to stay in business instead of getting yet another bank or a hairdresser in our center.
Yeah, no, like I said, I don't really want to make life difficult for businesses in Lexington, but I do believe that water is readily available in lots of containers, including aluminum and glass, and that it's really not going to impact the businesses. And as for bicyclists being one, I know that every bicycle rider I know carries their own water with them. And I did talk to the establishments I talked to. They all said that they would be willing to give out free water to somebody who came in and asked for it. And my experience with Dunkin' is that they will give you ice in that container. So life is good. Water's free and it's available. Well, it's not free, but it's a lot less expensive when it comes from the tap.
Is there an expense to getting water in aluminum or glass versus plastic? Because again, I cannot imagine paying more than $1 or so for the small water. And I haven't seen aluminum cans with water which were less than $2.50. But again, I haven't shopped for them, so I drink my tap water. Thank you.
Yeah, so aluminum will be more expensive than plastic. I kind of figure that's a thing that the shop owner will pass on to the customer.
Mark?
Okay, I had a comment, but then just let me respond to Olga's comment about bike riders. One of the things that the town has done on the bike path is we've put water bottle refiller fountains all along the bike path. And you can see one right behind Depot Square. There's just, in the town manager's report, Cal, I believe, Chinese Americans of Lexington bought another one at the other end. I think we now have 4 along the bike path. So that, yeah, I'm a bike rider as well. I always have a water bottle with me when I'm riding, and there's multiple places along the bike path to fill up with filtered water. These things filter the water as well. I would emphasize the comments that Cindy made about outreach at the select board meeting on Monday night. 3 or maybe 4 of the select board members were expressing concern that they were not likely to support this if there wasn't extensive outreach to the businesses in the town. So I think, you're saying you're going to be doing some more outreach. I think it's critically important to do that if you want to move this forward. But my final comment was in response to Janet's idea of amending this motion. And at the select board meeting on Monday night, I asked the town manager about this particular warrant article and whether town council had reviewed it. And he said it's identical to the town of Concord's warrant article, which our town council is also town council for Concord. And so he's very confident that it is an enforceable article and has been enforced for 12 years or however long, it's 12 years. And so I would be highly cautious about introducing something new into a warrant article this late in the process. If you want to get it approved, I think you're gonna want to make sure that we can say, listen, this is something that has existed for 12 years successfully in Concord. As soon as you start putting new requirements in that nobody's seen before, I think you lose a lot of votes.
Thanks, Mark. Mark Fortin.
Hi. Hey, Tom, thanks for putting this article on the warrant. So from my point of view, there's a climate change angle to plastic water bottles. There's a fairness angle, and then there's a public health angle. And really, everybody's been just talking about the the recycling aspects. And I think from a climate change standpoint, it's the making of the plastic that has the biggest impact on the climate change, from when you start with the drilling and the methane leaks associated with that, and the fracking and the transporting and the refining, and then the transporting to the chemical processor, and then chemically processing that stuff into plastic, and then making plastic pellets into plastic bottles, transporting the bottles to the bottling plants, then transporting those to the distribution facility, and then transporting that to the retail establishment. When you get done with all of that transporting and all that diesel, instead you could just turn on the tap or use your bottle filler. So that's the climate change aspect of it. But the fairness aspect boils down to most of these bottles, a good number of them are going to end up getting incinerated, and they're going to be incinerated at environmental justice communities or near them. And so how is that fair for us to be able to get our plastic water bottles, or for people here to sell them and then make someone else suffer the consequences of that? And then the other fairness issue is that the taxpayers in Lexington are really being forced to subsidize the sale of these bottles, because recycling costs, as I think I read somewhere Mark had written, have gone up 2.5 times higher than they were 10 years ago. And where are they going to go in the future when more and more landfills close and some of these very old incineration plants are forced to close or upgrade? But to me, the public health is the one that I'd have a hard time understanding why we would allow someone to sell a product that can harm people's health. Because we know about microplastics now. There's something like 240,000 microplastic particles in a 1 liter bottle of water that are ingested. But what we're just learning about is nanoplastics, which are much smaller and you can't see them with a microscope. These are less than 1 nanometer in dimensions and length. And those things there can cross the barrier into human cells. They can enter the bloodstream and impact your organs. And they can also pass through the placenta into the bodies of unborn babies. So the idea that we think it's okay to allow people to sell this because we don't want to interrupt their business, it's kind of almost like the gas-powered leaf blower argument, right? Is it really those guys' right to endanger the health of their own employees because they say they have a hard time getting an alternative? We know there's an alternative to plastic water bottles. Why are we allowing people to endanger the health of Lexington residents and the people who come here as guests? Is that our right to do that because we are uncomfortable? So that's the part I'm having. For me, it's a public health issue. Anyway, thanks again, Tom.
Great comments, Mark. Thank you. Avram, I see your hand is up again. I'm going to ask you to make a very short comment or question, and then we're going to close down for the night. And I really appreciate everybody who came, who's showing an interest in these articles, especially those who are not on town meeting, but can affect the town meeting vote by writing to your town meeting members. I believe in the link that was sent out with our LexCAN, there's it shows you how to write to your town meeting members. If anybody has any trouble with that, just write to info@lexcan.org and we will point you in the right direction. You should be able to find that information on the town website, but if you can't, we can help you find it. So go ahead, Avram. Maybe a phantom hand raise.
Sorry,
there
I
you
keep forgetting to unmute myself. So in addition to what was just said about the public health aspects of this, plastics are the petroleum industry's plan B for when they can't sell enough gasoline to power automobiles. So I think that anything we can do to put a finger in the eye of the petroleum industry is a good thing.
Absolutely.
Here, I agree.
Yeah. I would assume most people on this call would agree. And we can't let them have a plan B. We have to nip their plan B in the bud. So again, thank you to all the people who came and presented their articles, and took questions and gave answers. And We have a very, very involved Lexington community, which is what makes living here so wonderful. So thank you all. Have a good rest of your evening, and all you town meeting members, I'll see you on Monday.
Okay, good night.
Good night.